check, 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 check. So yeah, the headset works, but the An unbeaten home season put to the test tonight against perhaps its toughest challenge to date. Welcome inside Brome Pavilion. Mike Lefko with you, where Seattle Pacific is an impressive 11-0 at home this season, but they meet the force that is Western Washington, the 19-4 Vikings, 15-1 in conference, and as of Thursday, the four-time defending conference champions. Western Washington hasn't lost since September 23rd. On Thursday night, they picked up a win over Montana State University Billings to clinch the season title for the fourth straight year. First team in GNAC history to win 4 straight conference titles. But a lot on the line for Seattle Pacific outside of the quest for home perfection. This is big in the conference standings. While the Vikings have already clinched first, Seattle Pacific, with a win, can move up into second. And Simon Fraser lost earlier today to Montana State University Billings, so Seattle Pacific can move up into second. There's some other matches going on. They might be in a tie for second. But a win puts the Falcons in second place in the conference, and it would give them 600 wins in program history. Going to be an impressive matchup between two teams that are very familiar with each other. They played frequently in this spring season, the pandemic-shortened spring season that kind of made up for 2020. They played a lot. They played 6 times, and Seattle Pacific beat Western twice in those 6 matches. They have not beaten them, though, in a normal season, if you will, since 2013. So we're ready for volleyball here inside Brome Pavilion, and Emily Tulino serves it up. Very good server for Seattle Pacific. Two of the best defensive teams in the country, and there's Hannah Hare already making her presence felt. Hannah Hare, the sophomore from Walla Walla, second in the conference and 8th in the nation in blocks per set. Now, Seattle Pacific, one of the best blocking teams in the country. They're 5th in the country in blocks per set. That's not even first in a conference, and that's because this Western Washington team blocks at a slightly higher rate, 2.69 blocks per set. But it's an early lead for the Falcons after an attack error by Western Washington. 2-0 Seattle Pacific, and it stays with Emily Tulino. 3rd in the conference in aces per set, 0.46 per set. Tulino sends a float serve right down the middle. Gabby Gunterman, an All-American for Western Washington, sent it over, and a good swing and wide open space for Erin Gould, one of 2 seniors honored tonight for Seattle Pacific. And how about the run by the Falcons, 3-0 to start this one. They have been invincible at home this season. Teams that they beat at home, they lose to on the road, but here in Brome Pavilion, they're just unbeatable so far. This will be a tough test, though. Western Washington has owned this recent regular season series. To the outside pin, cross-court shot, kind of eats up Maliaga, but she's able to save it. Right down the middle, Hannah Hare has space. Good dig by Gunterman. Preseason all-conference selection, but it goes outside the antenna. And Seattle Pacific is on an absolute tear to begin this one. A 4-0 start. Hitting .667. A torrid pace to start this one in front of the senior night home crowd. The final home match of the regular season for the Falcons. A play right down the middle, inside out. Good shot by Callie Heilborn, the preseason all-conference selection, to get the first point for the Vikings. The 2019 GNAC Freshman of the Year. Heilborn and Gunterman, the 2 offensive stars for this Western Washington team. And they led this team to an impressive 2019 season. 27-3. They went 18-2 in conference. Service error, though, helps extend the Falcons' advantage. Early on in this first set, 3 matches left in the regular season for Seattle Pacific. Maliaga pushes it outside pin. Recovering the libero, Casey Woodruff. Another swing by Gunterman. It's dug out. A good pass off of it by Emily Tulino. Right down the middle again. Concerted effort down the middle for the Vikings. It pays off. Olivia Fairchild. So, yeah, you have to deal with the 2 All-Americans, and then, oh, yeah, Olivia Fairchild is perhaps the most dangerous offensive weapon on this team. She leads the conference in hitting percentage, .333 coming into this one, and 4th in the country in blocks per set. two defensive stalwarts. As we wait for Casey Woodruff, the sophomore, to serve it up. Back to Batiste. Good angle and a deep kill right on the back line. That's that outside pin. Seattle Pacific's had a lot of success on a couple of cross-court kills toward the back of the court. And Maddie Batiste, fifth-year senior, was honored before the match tonight. Pretty cool story told there. She was Abby Wright's first signee, first recruit who signed in 2017 after Wright was hired as the head coach here. Western Washington bangs one through. Cuts the deficit in half, 6-3. So they've kind of gone through this together. Abby Wright in her fifth season, and Maddie Batiste got the extra year after the COVID-displaced year in 2020. It is served by Tupula Logo. Quick play, and it's Allison Wilkes who hammers it home. That has been the groove from that pin, cutting back cross court, and Seattle Pacific has already connected on 3 of those shots. The Falcons are 14-8 this year, helped out by that 11-0 home record, including an impressive win on Thursday against Simon Fraser. That's a violation on the Falcons, point to Western Washington. It was a 3-1 win on Thursday. Maddie Batiste had 12 kills and 11 digs in that one. And Western Washington's coming off a sweep on Thursday as well. Both teams playing really good volleyball down the stretch. Quick play to the middle. Sydney Perry delivers home the point. Perry has really come on, the 6'3" opposite hitter. She's a sophomore. Career high 11 kills 3 times, including on Thursday against Simon Fraser. Seattle Pacific roared out to a 4-0 start. Served by Batiste, just tips over the net. Good block, redirects back down to Lindsay Rosenthal, the libero today for the Falcons. Back to the outside pin. A huge swing, and Callie Heilborn delivers her second kill. Well, for a great blocking team, the Vikings have had some trouble setting up the block so far against Seattle Pacific, and that's led to this 8-5 edge early going. Set number 1. The Vikings took this matchup earlier the year 3-0 on their home court. A tip into vacated space by Olivia Fairchild, softened up the middle. A mini run now for Western Washington. And after starting with a negative hitting percentage, the Vikings have pushed that back up to .267. But a service error, the second of the set. Chloe Ritzesender sends the serve over to Seattle Pacific, and it's a 9-6 edge. Here's Allison Wilkes, who got the start. And tough to redirect that off of Heilborn. And so far, Feed, the sophomore All-American, has worked out well, or the sophomore preseason All-Conference selection has worked out well for Western Washington. 3 kills already for Heilborn. And the lead is just now 2. Huge leap, but that's blocked. Flying in was Hannah Hare. Defense set up for Seattle Pacific. Sydney Perry delivers it down the sideline. Her second kill. Got the Western Washington defense a little bit unsettled. And it's 10-7. There have been some dramatic matches played this year between these two, but for these two teams, they've been clutch in the 5-setters. All the way to the opposite post. Tess Biskup was set up, and she's able to get the point. So the Vikings had Heilborn set up on that right pin. All the attention, the block was shifting that way. And a long cross-court pass by Logo, and that set up an easy kill by Tess Biskup. But another service error by Western Washington, and that's their third of the set. That's literally the difference right now, an 11-8 lead for the home team. And Seattle Pacific has those 3 points on 3 service errors. Dug out by Heilborn. Back over to Biskup. Ready to receive that one. Seattle Pacific just sends a free ball over. Little tap, and it's raced up and recovered. From the back line, a big swing, and a good point shaping up. Push up towards the pin. Batiste going to go up towards a double block. Able to corral. Everyone resettling. Shifting around the defense. Block was set, couldn't handle it. And a big swing by Gabby Gunterman. Got it past Emily Tulino. So a rapidly shifting point there, but it's Gabby Gunterman who delivers. Lead back to just 2 here for Seattle Pacific. Western Washington in the midst of another dominant season. Hannah Hare had it hit off, and then a rotation violation from the Vikings. The Western Washington's kind of been the class of this conference over the past 5 seasons, 72-4, and that includes 4 straight conference titles. In to serve was Paige Dawson, her first appearance in a while. And a big cross-court swing by Allison Wilkes, and that is where Seattle Pacific has had success. Trying to hit outside the block and getting those nice angles. They continue to have a very good attacking percentage this set, 538 now for the Falcons. Quick play to the outside pin. Biskup couldn't get it through, but then it's hammered home by Ritzesender. 7 matches of double-digit kills from the 6-foot middle blocker, Chloe Ritzesender. Connects on her first point. But Seattle Pacific maintaining the edge. They've led the entirety of this first set. Western Washington ranked 16th in the country. The Falcons are 2-3 this year against the top 25. Good tap over the net. Got the defense shifting up. The block went flying high, and Maddie Pruden popped it softly over. The Falcons have led by as many as 4, matching that lead right now. Lindsay Lambert fires it deep. Received well, a soft tap over. Back out to the pin, Maddie Pruden, or Maddie Batiste rather. Chasing down the block, Gould saves it. Had to play the free ball over, but the point maintains. And then Gunterman delivers a hammering kill, saved off the ceiling. And play on. What a play by the Falcons using all options available. And the defense has been stout. There's Batiste trying to end it. The Vikings reset from the back row. Heilborn's kill turned away. Again to Batiste, right into the block, and no bodies back there. A long, scrambling point, and Western Washington gets the better of it. But you can see why these two teams are 2 of the best in the country. And a timeout by Seattle Pacific. They are certainly the 2 best in this conference, and they're 2 of the best blocking teams in the country, in the top 5 in blocks per set. And the top 2 teams in assists per set and kills per set in this conference. But right now it is that 14-11 advantage for Seattle Pacific. Now they haven't beaten Western Washington, I guess you'd call it in a real match that counts because the NCAA didn't really keep records. They're not keeping records the 2020/2021 spring season because some teams played, some didn't. You played a varying number of matches. So while the Falcons did beat Western Washington a couple of times during the spring season, they have officially not beaten the Vikings since 2013. October 24th, 2013. They won on the road, actually, a 3-1 road win over Western Washington. That was also a historic win, the 500th in Seattle Pacific history. And as fate would have it, they're sitting at 599 right now. And who's the opponent? Oh, it's Western Washington. So the Falcons can pick up another milestone win if they emerge victorious tonight. And really would give them a pretty good resume for the season. They already have a win over number 13 St. Cloud State. At the time, they were ranked 13th. Now they're ranked 11th, so that win looks even better. Western Washington has some impressive wins. They're 2-3 against the top 25. But they beat a team that is now number 1 in the nation. Back on September 4th, beat MSU Denver. And then suffered a tough 5-set loss to Cal State San Bernardino, who is now ranked number 3. 14-12, couple of points for Western Washington. That caused the timeout, but the advantage maintains. And off the block, it goes back to the Falcons. So feed Maddie Batiste, even if it's going to be tough for the senior to hit around that block of the Vikings. There's the reason she leads this team in kills per set. 2.72 entering tonight. And Batiste serves. Float serve right down the middle. Tap back down by Wilkes. That pass went a little too far and right to the reach of the sophomore Allison Wilkes. Strong surge for the Falcons against perhaps one of the better teams they'll play this season. An impressive serve, dive bombing away from Casey Woodruff. That ball had all kinds of spin on it, and the service ace causes a timeout. Diane Flick-Williams, the UW volleyball legend, calls the timeout for Western Washington. 17-12 here for Seattle Pacific. It's a really impressive resume for Flick-Williams. Graduated from the University of Washington in 1993. She has been the coach at Western Washington. This is her 22nd season. 10 conference titles, 10-time Coach of the Year, and a national runner-up appearance in 2018. The Vikings have really stamped their mark on this conference since she took over. 2018, they had a historic season, 30-4, clean sweep of the conference, 20-0 in the GNAC. And how about this? They actually started 0-3 that year, won 30 straight matches to reach the national championship, and then lost a heartbreaker in 5 sets to the University of Tampa. And Gabby Gunterman, who's a junior, third-team All-American selection in 2019. She was a freshman on that team, had a pretty big impact in that national title game, 16 kills and 6 digs. So a lot of tournament-laden experience for this Western Washington team. Seattle Pacific's pretty young, outside of the 2 seniors. A lot of players coming back. It's going to be an impressive season. Well, it's been an impressive season this year, but next year, a lot of potential for Abby Wright's squad. They have this season to worry about. Gunterman sends it back. Batiste was right there. Big swing by Wilkes, but hits it into the net. The first attack error by Seattle Pacific. Actually, just the second by Seattle Pacific. They're hitting very well. 11 kills, 2 attack errors on 20 total attacks. And hitting around 500 in this first set. Low pass, it's recovered from the back row, and a good swing by Sarah Brockvogel. Got an assist from the net, kind of made that ball a little bit trickier to handle. But that's why the net's legal. Play it off the net if you can. 18-13, largest lead of the game for Seattle Pacific. So even off the Western Washington timeout, the Falcons are cruising. Aliaga sends it back right into the block, but just blocked out. Olivia Fairchild hit it right into the double block setup, but the Falcons couldn't keep it in the court. So a couple of kills for Fairchild here in this first set, 18-14. Malia Aliaga, one of 3 preseason all-conference selections for Western Washington, serves it up, and it's out. It's the 4th service error for Western Washington this set. Well, the serve-receive game, by far the difference right now. A service ace for Seattle Pacific and 4 service errors for Western Washington. These are the things that seem to happen to opponents when they come into Brome Pavilion. Unbeaten at home this year, 11-0 for Seattle Pacific. Tap over the top. Olivia Fairchild smiling after that one. She knew where the block was coming and slowed down the pace. A 6'2 middle, and Fairchild has some versatility playing out there like an outside hitter. 4 kills already this set. To the outside pin. Maliaga back out to Biskup. Back and forth through the block. Maddie Pruden. The 6-foot sophomore, the opposite hitter. Pruden connects. And that's 13 kills this set for the Falcons. Entered the match third in the conference in kills per set, about 13 per set for Seattle Pacific, so right at that right now, and a 5-point lead. Batiste swings into the block, and it was 2 tall players in Olivia Fairchild and Tess Biskup. This team is tall, too. Western Washington, they go 6'2 with Fairchild, 6 foot with Ritza Setter, and 6'1 with Callie Heilborn. The Falcons trying to hold on here in set number 1. The Vikings mustering a surge. Deep serve. Eats up Rosenthal, but she gets it back over cleanly. A little deception on the set. Doesn't fool Seattle Pacific. Into the net. Saved by Western Washington. And a free ball for the Falcons. A fake to the middle. Back set. Spins off a couple of hands. And the block's corralled. Down the middle again. Good dig by the Falcons. Big left-handed swing by Pruden. From the back row, Heilborn. The Falcons in that defensive shell. And a sharp angle connects. It eats up Tess Biskup. Terrifically defended point by Seattle Pacific. And the crowd has come to life on another timeout by Western Washington. 21-16. Seattle Pacific eyeing set number 1. They're hitting .367. They have played some clean volleyball, just 3 attack errors. A couple of blocks. And Western Washington is out-blocking them so far, 4-2. But really, it's come down to the serve-receive game. 4 service errors by Western Washington. That's the game right now in a 21-16 edge. So the Vikings have only lost in conference once. Have only lost in conference. I think I added a T there. Conference does not have a T in it. September 23rd, 3-1 at Central Washington. And Seattle Pacific is one of 3 teams in this conference that's undefeated at home. So this is a strong conference for protecting the home court. Western Washington and Central Washington, the other 2 teams who are unbeaten at home. And oh yeah, Seattle Pacific has to go play at Central Washington on Thursday. So this would be a very big game to take away if you're the Falcons. You could leap up into second. You could topple a Titan in the conference and build up a lot of momentum going into the final 2 games of the season. But a lot of volleyball left. Lindsay Rosenthal puts it in. Biskup swings right into the block. Huge defensive stand by the Falcons. Blocked right back down, and it's 22-16. They have had this strange dominance at home. Teams that have beaten them easily on the road have been unable to counter what the Falcons bring at home. A scramble. Sends it back over, and a lucky break off the net, but it's recovered. And a free ball, and Diane Flick-Williams is screaming that something had to have happened there, and now play is stopped, and well, both sides are asking for a point, and Diane Flick-Williams has put the challenge card over there. She wanted a double touch or something off the net, and it was very strange. Western Washington had stopped playing, and then the Falcons stopped right in the middle of the point as the head official was getting berated by Diane Flick-Williams. So they'll look and try to sort something out. It's a pretty pivotal point. Right now, as it stands, the scoreboard has given it to Seattle Pacific. So we'll see what they're looking at. I think they're trying to see if maybe Maddie Batiste had a double touch on that when it hit the net and then kind of was fumbled around back to the Falcons. Because as that happened and play continued, Flick Williams leapt up from her chair and started yelling and asking what was going on. And then she had the green, I guess that's a challenge card, a review card. So she had that waving around, wanted to hand it to the official. But in the early going, the defenses are showing why they're two of the best in the country. 4 blocks apiece now. So Seattle Pacific, a couple of blocks on these last 2 points. It's been a good day for the Falcons across their sports. Women's soccer, conference champions after a win over Western Washington. Men's soccer is going to await the outcome of Simon Fraser and Western Washington. Those two teams are playing right now. Seattle Pacific currently 3 points clear. They could win outright, or there could be a tie atop the standings, but I believe a tiebreaker would go to Seattle Pacific if they're tied with Western Washington. So men's soccer currently sitting in first, women's soccer conference champions, and volleyball doing quite well right now. And then women's basketball won earlier this afternoon on this very court. So it was given to, the point was, well, it looks like it was given to Western Washington, but they should have one more point on the scoreboard. And then an attack error sent out. Well, the ball is rolling back to Western Washington. It was announced as a point for Seattle Pacific. Okay, it was tipped off of the Falcons. So a couple of key swings here. Now it's 22-17 instead of what could have been 23-15. To the opposite, Perry, way high off the ceiling, recovered well, tipped through the block. And it's a surge by the Vikings, 3 straight points to narrow this first set, 22-18 on the serve of Tupu Lalogo. Back set, and they're trying to feed Maddie Pruden. Right down the middle, Ritza Sender. Thought she had some space. Seattle Pacific was there. And then Maddie Batiste has it hit off the net and ricochet back. The net holding taut on that one. It's still vibrating with the force of that swing. But it held firm. Didn't roll over. And now a 4-0 run by Western Washington. To the middle, off a block. Maliaga sends it, and then an attack error. No. Wow, okay. That went off of Seattle Pacific. That went off the net. So that's another point, and a 5-0 run causes a timeout. The second of the set from Abby Wright. Well, that one, on the swing from Ritza Center, looked like it blocked right off of the net, but it turns out it was deflected off a Falcon. So what a surge since that stoppage in the review to change that point. It looked like it was the right call because everyone on the Western Washington side kind of stopped immediately. But that momentum swing has been huge for the Vikings. Instead of 23 for Seattle Pacific, the Falcons have been stuck on 22, and it's now a 5-0 run, and on the serve of Western Washington. But that's arguably been their downfall in this set, their serve. They have 4 service errors. Vikings showing why they've been tough to beat. They've won 14 straight, and you get battle-tested amidst a stretch like that. Still on the serve of Tupu Lalogo. Jumps into this one. Had some velocity. Too tough to handle. What a serve by Lalogo. That picked up speed and had some spin, cutting away at the last moment. And a good time to unleash that one. 6-0 run. See if Lalogo tries to Go hard and deep again. This time it's short, and it catches Seattle Pacific off guard. The logo just playing mind games with the serve. Directly led to 2 points, back-to-back service aces, and just like that, this first set is tied. A stunning reversal right now in the first set. The logo's serve has been tough to handle. That one is received cleanly. Batiste taps it over short, flying in, and it's recovered by Western Washington. Diving dig by Seattle Pacific to the outside, right in position were the Vikings. Back to the pin, into the block, and Seattle Pacific ends the run with a huge point. A 7-0 run comes to an end in the most important time for the Falcons, 23-22 here in set number 1. Couldn't ask for a better matchup right now towards the end of the season between two of the best teams in the conference. And Ashley Antoniak will serve. Sends one down the sideline. Popping it to the outside pin. Clean swing right through the block. Ritza sender. Tied up once again. 23-23. That was Gunterman, actually. And a floating serve sails long. The 5th service error. Gabby Gunterman delivered a huge kill. Then she sends it flying long. And all of a sudden, Seattle Pacific can win it right here in set number 1. 24-22. Maddie Batiste serving. Jumps into it right down the line. Over to Gunterman. Maliaga to the outside pin. Push back deep. A dig by Batiste. Back outside, timing the leap. Gould. And it's recovered cleanly. From the back row, Gunterman, huge swing. Dive bombing it into the right side of the court. And Gabby Gunterman showing why she's a third-team All-American in 2019. That is a big swing to take from the back row. But we're tied in set number 1, 24-24. It's a little bonus volleyball in set number 1. Adele Holland comes in for the first time, but it's a huge kill, a quick play set up for the senior Erin Gould. Delivers in the most important moment on senior night. And once again, the Falcons are a point away. Big crowd on hand, and they're on their feet right now for the home team. Allison Wilkes will try to end the first set. Wilkes flies into the serve. Gunterman receives, set low, tip back over. Right back out to Maliaga. Into the arms of Batiste. Set up for Batiste again. Back row swing. It's tipped out, and Seattle Pacific takes set number 1. A huge surge to start the first set. A valiant rally by Western Washington, and then they grind in the last few points to take set number 1, 26-24. Seattle Pacific gets it done in the first set. A brief pause now. We'll come back for set number 2. 1-0, the home team here at Brome Pavilion. An impressive first set of volleyball from both teams. Seattle Pacific leapt out to a 4-0 lead. Western Washington looked like it was going to kind of get away from them, but a 7-0 run tied the match at 22-all. And then Seattle Pacific just grinded it out with a key service error and then a big swing by Maddie Batiste to take the 26-24 first set win. Batiste had 3 kills. She had to work for them, though, on 12 total attacks and had 3 attack errors. Wilkes had 3 kills on just 5 attacks, so she's hitting 400. And Maddie Pruden had 3 kills as well to lead the Falcons. Western Washington was led by Olivia Fairchild, who had 4 kills on 9 swings and 2 attack errors. And then Ritza Sender and Callie Heilborn had 3. But good team hitting by Seattle Pacific in the first set. They hit 308, which for this Western Washington team, they're one of the best defensive teams in the country. That is an impressive number by Seattle Pacific. And the service errors loom large. 5 service errors in the first set by Western Washington. No service errors from Seattle Pacific. So we're ready for set number 2. And it's Casey Woodruff, the libero, who sends it in and immediately gets a service ace. No quick start this time for Seattle Pacific. They leapt out to a 4-0 lead in the first set and never trailed. That was a big part, being able to hold off one of the best teams in the country, 16th ranked Western Washington. Hannah Hare tried to swing over from the middle. It was tipped right back to her. So Batiste just sends it over as a free ball. Almost led to a point with some miscommunication. Seattle Pacific scrambling to get that ball tracked down off the swing of Gunterman. Good defenses all around. Back to Gunterman. Tap short and caught Emily Tulino off guard. Right in the middle of a mistimed jump. And that leads to a point for Western Washington. 2-0 start for the Vikings. They're on a 14-match win streak. And they're 15-1 in conference. We are going to take a look at something, or look at some rotations, I think. Well, the point went to Western Washington, but they're going to review it. All right. They will review that one. Well, Western Washington trying to make another deep run to the NCAA tournament. Got to the Final Four in 2016. The national championship game in 2018. In 2019, they had a really nice season. But then they lost to Azusa Pacific, a 5-setter in the regional semis. And in 2017, kind of when this run of dominance began in the GNAC, 72-4 over the last 5 seasons, they went 19-1 in conference, but then lost in the regional final to Cal State San Bernardino. And right now, as the rankings stand, it looks like that would be another showdown. It would set up a showdown again between these top 2 teams in the West region, Western Washington and Cal State San Bernardino. They would be the 1 and 2 seeds. Could have another regional final matchup. Hannah Hare comes out of the break and hammers one through the block. 4th in the conference in hitting percentage. These middles are so effective for Western Washington and Seattle Pacific. Hannah Hare and Olivia Fairchild. 2 offensive-minded middles. Falcons are on the board. Emily Tulino, their best server, sends it over. Down that sideline, tipped back by Hare. Tried to pop it right back down on the sideline and just missed. Pretty even match right now, as reflected by the fact that, well, it took some extra volleyball to decide set number 1, 26-24. Currently 19-17 kill edge for Western Washington, but now make it 19-18. Big swing from Erin Gould. She's really come on strong here in her senior season. 7 matches of double-digit kills. Had a career-high 15 kills and 21 digs against Northwest Nazarene. Float serve goes to the back row. Place right back over to Gunterman, who holds her hands up in surprise and says, all right, so we'll take that clean kill. No Falcons defender got an arm on it. Just sailed toward that back gray end line and settled down harmlessly. 4-2, early edge for Western Washington. And Gunterman serves. Tulino races up to set it for Batiste. Right back to the same antenna, and Batiste with a great angle down the line. That's some accuracy to paint the gray line for her first kill of the second set. 4 kills in the match now for Batiste. She will swing until her arm falls off. All conference honorable mention in 2019. Aliaga just sets it over herself. And another impressive swing. Maddie Pruden. The Falcons are tagging these back lines with accuracy. They have been so impressive at home this year. It's worth repeating because 11-0 is one of the best home marks ever. And they can complete the unbeaten home season with a win tonight. Another swing and another result the same for Maddie Pruden. Back-to-back kills for the opposite side hitter. So if Seattle Pacific pulls off the win, they would be 12-0 at home. And they will get their first regular season win over Western Washington since 2013. Way outside the antenna, trying to swing it back in was Ritzesender, but it's an attack error. A 3-0 surge by Seattle Pacific, and the Falcons are in front 6-4. Paige Dawson back to serve. The juniors' float serves received cleanly. And then a little miscommunication leads to a kill. Got trapped in between Paige Dawson and Maddie Batiste. So over to Ritzesender to serve. Very good defensive player in 2019 and good again this year, but another service error. The Western Washington has tried to really pepper the Seattle Pacific defense with these deep serves, but it hasn't worked really too well yet. 6 attacking errors. Now, Tupulalogo had an impressive stretch of serving that led to a 7-0 run for Western Washington, including 2 back-to-back service aces. But outside of that, if you look at all the numbers, the hitting percentage, the kills for Western Washington, and the blocks, they all favor the Vikings, except hitting percentage right now. But most offensive numbers here are favoring the Vikings, but the service errors are the big difference. 7-6 game. The home Falcons in front. And then just set right into the net. Trying to pass it over. Sydney Perry lost track of where she was and pushed it too low. We are tied at 7 here in set number 2. Western Washington has already clinched the conference title. They did so with a win on Thursday. It's their 4th straight conference championship. But playing for national ranking, and Seattle Pacific trying to move up in the conference. It would be very impressive to finish 2nd in this conference, and they can move into 2nd with a win here tonight. Trying to race it down off the net. Good play by Malia Aliaga, but then everyone was out of position, and Seattle Pacific takes advantage. 3 preseason all-conference selections on this Western Washington roster. The setter, Malia Aliaga, and the outside hitters, Callie Heilborn and Gabby Gunterman. Aliaga over to the outside, and Olivia Fairchild hammers it home. Had a game-high 4 kills in the first set. That's her first here in set number 2. She's got 5. Or no, now 6. She had one earlier in this set. 6 kills for Fairchild. And it's a 9-8 game. A big swing by Perry. It was right into the block, though. That's that Vikings defense, third in the country in blocks per set, 2.69, paying off to tie this match, or tie this game in this match. It's a 1-0 set edge for Seattle Pacific. And an errant return goes for a service ace. Just kind of spun off the hands of Maddie Batiste in a valiant effort to try to track it down. But a 3-0 run by the Vikings now makes it 10-9. A lot of spin on that one. Hits off the head of Wilkes. Able to avert disaster. Racing in front to set it up for Gunterman. Delivered back out to Maddie Batiste. A deep shot from the back row, and it's hit into the net. That one deflected back off the net. That was the third shot for Seattle Pacific, so point goes to Western Washington. An 11-9 edge here for the Vikings. Some good spin on that serve. And Callie Heilborn gets her first service ace. That's now 6 service aces. 5 service aces for Western Washington. So they're having some trouble serving, but they're also dominating with the service aces. I think, all right, I should have just called the future there. I had it right. That's the 6th service ace now for Western Washington. And they have come out and really controlled the serve-receive game this set. It started on the very first point. Very first point to start set number 2 was a service ace. And that's been the story of this one. 13-9 edge. To the outside. Big swing by Perry. Off the ceiling. I love that you can just play it off the ceiling. Because that ball's going to deflect to every which way. And it was a good defensive presence to track it down. But then a big swing leads to a tough chance, and it can't be returned by Western Washington. So Seattle Pacific ends a big run by the Vikings. Couple of rotations bring in Allison Wilkes, and the libero Lindsay Rosenthal sits out. Wilkes had the winning serve in set number 1. Sends one deep, picked up by Heilborn, and then eats up the back row. Good swing from down the middle. Got Ashley Antoniak before she was set. Clean hitting this set from Western Washington. They are hitting .385 here in set number 2. Oh, now updated. I should just wait for the stats to update here. They're now hitting .429, so even better in set number 2. Deep cross-court swing. It goes right into the waiting arms of Heilborn. Back over the net. Nope, a violation called there on Seattle Pacific. And Western Washington trying to assert their will on set number 2. That forces a timeout from Abby Wright. It was almost like Western Washington needed a bit of a jolt and a wake-up, because Seattle Pacific came out on fire in the first set, 4-0 run to start this game, then extended the advantage to as many as 7 points toward the back end of that first set. Western Washington rallied all the way back and tied it at 22, could never grab the lead, and the Falcons had enough momentum and, boosted by the home crowd, had enough to carry past for a 26-24 edge. But so far, it's been serving and lockdown attacking by Western Washington in set number 2. Well, both teams are hitting really well here in this set. .294 hitting percentage for Seattle Pacific. And you'll take that. That's a great hitting percentage against a team like Western Washington. It's just that these vaunted defenses are having trouble with all the offensive weapons. So a 15-10 edge, and it's Casey Woodruff to serve. Right down the middle. Received cleanly by Lindsay Rosenthal. Over to Hannah Hare, and the middle blocker delivers the kill. Well, middle blockers are just so effective because they're usually never going to see 2 players on the block. That block will try to slide over to the pins, and you have to kind of manage how much you go to the middle, or else that block will slide over and be ready for it. But usually you get a pretty isolated shot when you're a middle blocker, and Hannah Hare took advantage of it. Quick tap over the top by Biskup. Back down the middle again from the back row. Antonia Katted trickle over. Block set up. Gunterman back down to get her own shot. And then Gunterman leaps and swings it over. Racing up in front, Rosenthal. Free ball sent over. Here are the Vikings down the middle. A great dig by Rosenthal. Back set, tapped up. And a point goes to Western Washington. Oh, rotate violation there on Seattle Pacific. And that's tough. That was a good defensive point, good rotating, and both teams in position well. But it's now 16-11. And now the Vikings are hitting over 444 here in this set. Dead into the block. They were ready that time for Hannah Hare, and then no one back. And it was Malia Aliaga who got part of that one. The 5-7 setter was part of that block. Well, she's good at getting assists, but I'm not sure you expect a lot of blocks from your setter, although that looked like she had part of it. Aliaga sets it up. Right back down, Hannah Hare, and Hare gets it to power through. Hannah Hare has been the consistent presence on offense for Seattle Pacific here in set number 2. And they have needed those kills to stay in this set. Now a team-high 5 kills. And no attack errors from Hannah Hare. So she's hitting 500 right now in this match. But the Vikings maintain that 5-point edge. Aliaga to the outside. Huge swing by Gunterman. It was right into the block. Ritzesender denied from the middle, and then flicked back over. It was saved. Thought that point was done, but off the floor, Seattle Pacific saves it. Ritzesender trying to pop it back through and blocked out. Lot of momentum on that block, carried all the way back halfway down the court, and just landed out. And that's a timeout from Abby Wright. Her second of the set, but it comes at a critical time. 18-12. Now the largest lead of this set for Western Washington. They really have kind of owned the series against Seattle Pacific. But here is how good Seattle Pacific has been at home, even in the midst of Western Washington's dominance. In 2017 and 2018, when the Vikings won here at Seattle Pacific, it took 5 sets. A couple of 3-2 wins for Western Washington. And you contrast that, and all the matches that they have played in Bellingham have been 3-0 wins. This year, the same. Western Washington won 3-0 earlier this year, back on October 14th. And in that one, Olivia Fairchild had 10 kills. She hit .421 and had 5 blocks. But already, 1 set in hand for Seattle Pacific. So this will have to go at least 4. But it's been pretty nice cruising for Western Washington so far in this set. We did see a big run from the Vikings when they were down. Certainly not over yet in set number 2 for Seattle Pacific. Gunterman swings it deep. Over to Maddie Batiste. A swing and just out. But it was tipped. All right. And I think we might have the old challenge or review. Diane Flick-Williams wants an explanation. So one official, the end judge, sitting here on the back row, held the flag up, but then it was the official on the floor looking right at the net that said it was deflected, and the point goes to the Falcons. That's why you have multiple officials, so you can look at all parts of a play. A lot of moving pieces going on in the middle of a point. Right down the middle. Ritz sender at the serve, a big swing. Sends it past the Falcons. There's that size up front for Western Washington. Ritz sender 6 foot. Olivia Fairchild 6'2". Callie Heilborn 6'1", and Gabby Gunterman 5'10". And it's Adele Holland in, the 5'8" freshman center. Looks like it caught off guard Olivia Fairchild. Good play right down the middle. A quick setup leads to a point for the Falcons. And that'll bring in Lindsay Lambert. One of the two setters that really runs the offense for Seattle Pacific. Lambert's second on the team, a little over 5 assists per set. She's behind freshman Emily Tulino. 6.49 assists per set. That leads Seattle Pacific. Dug out cleanly. And a great save, chasing it down by Lambert. Play continues. Raced off the court to get that one. And then the block delivers the point. Up here, the Falcons, you're fired up by that effort. Lambert chased it down. Saved what looked like a sheer win for Western Washington. And then the block delivers. Allison Wilkes was set up in good position. And a serve just flies out. That's the first service error by Seattle Pacific this match. So they have served very well up until that point. 6 service errors from Western Washington, the first by Seattle Pacific. To the outside, Maddie Batiste hit the antenna. It's still vibrating, and now it's 21-15. So in this set, Seattle Pacific hitting 308. They're now down to 259 after that miss. They dominated in that first set, great attacking percentage. Lambert chases it down. Racing up, Gould sends it over. And an opportunity for Western Washington. Flicked out. Olivia Fairchild tried to kind of go short corner in the tough angle. Just put a little too much English on it. 21-16. Maddie Batiste goes back to serve for the Falcons. Float serve, eats up Woodruff. Racing back over, Heilborn gets it. Down the middle, Wilkes. Tapped right over to Aliaga. And then it's sent home. Down the middle, Olivia Fairchild. This is where Western Washington made their rally in set number 1, when Seattle Pacific reached 22 points. Running out of time, and that ball drops. No spin on that float serve, and it just went dive bombing down into the court after the Falcons cleared out thinking it would go long. The 7th service ace by Western Washington. Straight over to Batiste. Wilkes has it blocked. Cycling back over to the other antenna. Here come the Vikings. Back set, and it's blocked down, but in position. Western Washington able to keep the point alive. To the outside, Brockvogel. That's denied. Gunterman taps it to the back row. Rotating over, a big swing. It's drilled home, but it's a violation on Western Washington. So many moving pieces on points like that, and looks like someone just came up from the back line and they were called for it. Allison Wilkes sends a deep serve sailing out. And where they were so clean to start this match, now a little bit of a crack for the serving side on Seattle Pacific. 2 service errors here in this set. Western Washington can close it out on their serve. It's sent over by Woodruff. Down the middle, Hare flicks it over. Right back to Biska. Big swing, dynamic angle, and just wide. Very sharp angle on that swing by Biska to go completely cross court. And she sends it out. 24-18 here in set number 2. Gunterman right down the corner. It's good. And Gabby Gunterman hammers home set number 2. We are deadlocked, 1 set apiece here in what should be a terrific finish, however long it goes, here in Brome Pavilion. A long break coming up, tied at 1 set apiece, 26-24 and then 25-18. A bit of a break, and then we'll return for set number 3. back for set number 3. Western Washington cruised to pretty easy second set win after a hard-fought first set. It was the service aces in that set that really carried the way for Western Washington. In the second set, they had 5 service aces compared to 2 service errors for Seattle Pacific. So the serve-receive game continues to be a major part of this match right now because the teams hit pretty well. 235 attacking percentage in the second set for Seattle Pacific, 290 for Western Washington. And as mentioned right there, serve-receive game. Back-to-back sets have now started off with a service ace or a service error, and the service error sends it right over to Western Washington. An early edge for the Vikings. Tulino sends it down to Hannah Hare. Racing back up, Aliaga. Good dig by Rosenthal. To the outside, but right into the block. And it was Chloe Ritzesender and Gabby Gunterman. This is where Western Washington is so dangerous. 3rd in the country in blocks per set, 2.69. And in this match, they already have 11 blocks. But an attack error brings it back over to Seattle Pacific. Make that 12 blocks now for Western Washington. Seattle Pacific has 10. 40 digs for the Falcons. And then pretty even in kills, 30-29 edge for Western Washington in kills. Tipped around and had a little strange roll off the net. Maddie Pruden had that ball slide off her arms. Early lead for Western Washington. Tupula Logo serves. She's the one that had the dangerous serve for Seattle Pacific. Back-to-back service aces in set number 1. Received cleanly. To the outside, Gunterman swings long. They're asking for a tip, but it was missed cleanly, if you will. So an attack error, a rare one for Gabby Gunterman. 8 kills in the match. And just 2 attack errors. To the outside, right back to Gunterman. Seattle Pacific ready, sliding over the double block. And that time, Gunterman just goes cross court and finds space. Well positioned to dig it out, but somehow could not pick up the speed of that Gabby Gunterman swing. I guess not somehow. I mean, that's a pretty impressive swing, so good hit by Gunterman. Showing why she's one of the best in the conference. And there's another one who's one of the best, and that one goes just long. Another brief glance. I think Seattle Pacific thought that might have touched a couple of fingertips of a Western Washington player, but it was not. So a miss on that attacking setup by Maddie Batiste. Big swing and a valiant effort to try to track that one down, but a kill for the Falcons. The home win streak is on the line for Seattle Pacific. They're 11-0 at home this year. They've won 3 straight this season right now, and they're trying to keep some momentum going on a 10-5 conference mark. Currently trying to move up into second in the GNAC. And a receiving error by Casey Woodruff. So a service ace for Seattle Pacific. Climb back within 1. Huge stakes for the Falcons. They can also get win number 600 in program history. Western Washington just trying to keep that momentum going. They've won 14 straight, and they've already clinched their 4th straight conference crown. Cut shot by Ritzesender. Dive bombed into the corner. That had some strange side spin on it, too. That ball also looked like it was really headed deep in the back corner and then just able to land into the court. Ritzesender sails that one long, though. Couple of service errors for Ritzesender. That's her second service error. And now the service errors have picked up again for Western Washington. 7 in this match. Well, consistent. 7 service aces, 7 service errors. I guess it's all a wash in that aspect. Right into the block on the swing by Callie Heilborn. And now Gunterman goes back row and just long. Very close, but the swing with a little too much velocity. Tied up at 6 here in set number 3. First set went the way of Seattle Pacific, second to Western Washington. But this is a Western Washington team that really hasn't been challenged much over the past couple of weeks, so if Seattle Pacific can kind of put the screws to Western Washington, we'll see how the Vikings respond to a little adversity for the first time in a while. Their last 4 matches, they've dropped just 1 set. That was back on November 8th, a 3-1 win to Alaska Anchorage. And there's a service ace, and it is a massive run now for Seattle Pacific. 5-0 run by the Falcons. Maddie Batiste sends it over and pushed out by Malia Aliaga. The momentum has picked up some steam. A few self-inflicted errors for the Vikings during this stretch. And Maddie Batiste is taking advantage. Right into the block and then dive bombing over and falling in. That was an impressive swing by Heilborn. I mean, there were 2 Seattle Pacific defenders right there, but it just went through them. Deep serve, and it's another one that's long. Western Washington playing a dangerous game of tag with the end line. And so far, it has not paid off to their advantage. 8 service errors for Western Washington. In their only conference loss, they did not hit well. They only hit 184. That's not the case tonight. They're hitting well. They just are giving away too many free points. These teams are hitting remarkably close to each other. Seattle Pacific hitting 259 and Western Washington at 263. Racing over to set up Gould, but the pass goes awry. Back over to Western Washington. A set down the middle. Hare's swing is denied. A good diving dig. And then some miscommunication right down the middle on what looked like a pretty routine ball leads to the point for Western Washington. The front row was sliding out of the way. The back line didn't see it. And that ball just drops in between everyone. Handled cleanly by Lindsay Rosenthal. Quickly over the top. And Seattle Pacific gets it right back. We have not seen any late lead changes so far in this match. The first set was very close, but Seattle Pacific held the lead throughout. The same thing with Western Washington. They had the lead the entirety of the second set. So the team that has been in front has stayed in front. Serve goes out from Emily Tulino, one of the better servers on the Seattle Pacific team. And this one kind of has the feel of a couple of lead changes perhaps here in this set. An 11-10 edge. Seattle Pacific. Racing back, a diving attempt by Tulino. The ball goes into the stands. Just like that, tied at 11. It's senior night for the Falcons. They honored 2 seniors before the match, Maddie Batiste and Aaron Gould. But a lot of pieces in place for next year and a lot of players coming back from this Falcons team. And the same can be said, though, of Western Washington. They have no seniors on the roster. That is a terrifying thought for the rest of the conference, that the 4-time defending conference champs will return everyone next season. 12-11 lead for the Falcons. Floating ball picked up by Aaron Gould. Back out to Batiste. What a dig by Casey Woodruff. Sets up a Gunterman attempt, and then that ball redeflects, and such is the fickle nature of playing it off the roof. That's why I'd been impressed before that one, because both teams had played balls well off the ceiling and were able to get the points continued. That time, just an inexplicable deflection off one of the bars up top, and it sailed right back down where no one was. Western Washington block in position, and then it was slapped over by Chloe Ritzesender. Able to get the lead once more. So here are the lead changes that kind of denied us in the first two sets. But Abby Wright is going to ask to, no, not look at it. She's just going to ask for a rotation question here. And some brief strategy being talked about with her assistant Haley Gaines over there on the Seattle Pacific bench. Back set over to the left side. Maddie Pruden hits it through. And no one in position. Seattle Pacific slid the block over. That set up space on the other side. No timeout just yet, but some coaching on that sideline from Abby Wright over to her senior Maddie Batiste. Western Washington trying to get some breathing room. They're in front by 2 points now. Critical third set, tied at 1, and when all else fails, go to Hannah Hare. Hannah Hare hammers it home, and then will rotate out to bring in Paige Dawson to serve. Dawson and Tulino come in. Aaron Gould's back there on the back row. Maddie Batiste and Allison Wilkes up front in the middle. That was out. They were yelling out, but Heilborn played it. Batiste races into her shot. Set up perfectly by Woodruff and Western Washington. Tap back to the middle. Wilkes has to send it over. Slung in front, deflecting off of a couple of players. Tulino and Dawson almost collide. And it's a Western Washington point. Misdirection paying off for Western Washington here in this set. Can't always go power. Got to catch that block a little off guard, and they did so there. 15-13, the Western Washington edge. Down the middle, a big swing by Wilkes. Is able to catch a couple of Viking defenders in the same spot, and Wilkes gets the kill. That'll boost the hitting percentage. But Western Washington, pretty dominant right now, hitting .381. Seattle Pacific continues to hit pretty well, though. I mean, they're in the high 200s, 263 here in this third set. And for the match, they're hitting .272. Out to the outside pin. Huge swing, but it was right there from Rosenthal, and then it went straight down, and Lindsay Lambert wasn't there for it. That was some velocity, though. And after that dig, the ball went high up into the rafters. Narrow lead for the Vikings as they try to eke out this third set. But that ball served right into the net. Adele Holland. Another service error by Western Washington. Well, if you are correcting something and getting the red pen out to circle the glaring errors and factors that have led to the difference in this match so far, get the red pen and circle that service error category. 9 service errors for Western Washington. But they go right back to what's worked well. Olivia Fairchild swinging around to the outside pin and delivering the kill. 17-15 edge. And timeout. Abby Wright. Critical situation. The Falcons are going to talk it over. 17-15, Western Washington leads. Seattle Pacific has won 3 straight. They beat Simon Fraser on Thursday. Really nice win for a team that beat the Falcons on the road. But that has been the strange nature, almost the two different teams this year. Seattle Pacific just 2-6 away from home, 11-0 at home this season. They've beaten teams like Simon Fraser. They beat Central Washington, who beat Western Washington. So Central Washington was coming off a win over Western Washington. They came here into Brome Pavilion, and the Falcons dispatched them with ease. And Seattle Pacific also has a non-conference win over a top 25 team in St. Cloud State. So all around, really, really tough to beat this Seattle Pacific team at home. And Western Washington is trying to do that. They lead 17-15. Out of the timeout now. It's Malia Aliaga to serve. Just skimming over the net. Almost had another service error. Right back up to her. Pushing it to the pin. Right into the block. Soaring to block it down. Sarah Brockvogel and Allison Wilkes. The two best blocking teams in the conference are combining for an impressive defensive performance so far. 12 blocks for Western Washington, 11 for Seattle Pacific. Back within 1 point. High shot by Fairchild. Raced down and sent back over. Back over to Fairchild again. And Seattle Pacific can't get that one. So back-to-back swings by Fairchild. She's able to send it through on the second. And Olivia Fairchild continues to pace the offensive output for Western Washington. 18-16 edge. Here for Western Washington. Big swing. Brockvogel delivers one home. Fairchild has 10 kills tonight for Western Washington. That leads all players. For Seattle Pacific, 8 kills for Hannah Hare. Still does not have an attack error. 8 kills on 16 total attacks. And back within 1. Here's Emily Tulino, one of the best servers in the conference, but her serve sails long, and that's her second service error. Tulino came in averaging .46 assists per set, or aces per set, so nearly a service ace per set. But it's been a couple of service errors. And that ball can't get over the net, and now at a critical moment, Western Washington has strung together a couple of points, and Abby Wright wants to use her final timeout. 20-17. Now, Seattle Pacific does have a 5-set home win. That came earlier this year against Biola. And that kind of gave an indication of how special of a season this would be. That was back on September 9th. You kind of knew in that weekend, that was the SPU Invitational, where they beat Biola 3-2, and then absolutely took it to St. Cloud State. It was a really impressive win, a 3-0 win over St. Cloud State, here to cap off that tournament for Seattle Pacific. They have also recorded some other impressive home wins. The Central Washington one in September. Central Washington would go on to beat Western a week later. And then, here's where it's so strange, the dynamic road and home. So after that, after Seattle Pacific had won 6 straight, they went up to Alaska. Lost pretty handily. Lost 3-1 at Alaska Fairbanks. Lost 3-0 at Alaska Anchorage. Flip forward a month, October 21st and October 23rd. 3-0 win against Alaska Anchorage. And a 3-2 win here against Alaska Fairbanks. That Fairbanks team is tough. They took Western Washington to 5 sets. Oh, a miscommunication and just kind of nubbed off the hands from Malia Aliaga. Breathing some life back into Seattle Pacific. 20-18. Pushed outside. Gunterman had it blocked. They're going to fly right back to her. The block's in position, but hammered right through. Couldn't close the arms, and there was a sliver of space, and Gabby Gunterman went right back through it. So Western Washington not shy about feeding the same player over and over. Whether it's been Fairchild or Gunterman, they'll hit it multiple times and just kind of feed them until the attack pays off. The Lologos serve handled cleanly. And a cut shot just sails long. Getting away from Seattle Pacific now here in set number 3. 22-18 edge. Deep serve. It's played, though. That was going to be a tough one in between the back line. And then from the back row, Gould's swing goes right into the net. 23-18. There's a pretty sizable Western Washington crowd on hand here. A lot of players from around the area, around the Seattle area. So no doubt their families have come. Right down the middle, Hare has been deadly, and she delivers again. Hannah Hare with her 10th kill. The first to get to double digits for Seattle Pacific. Hare now has 9 matches of double-digit kills this season. A spinning serve just sails out on Lindsay Rosenthal. That's the 3rd service error this set for Seattle Pacific. The serve-receive game just so costly for these two teams. And now Western Washington's a point away. Back set to the outside, right into the block. And it's blocked down by Callie Heilborn to take set number 3. 25-19. It's going to take some fight for Seattle Pacific to keep the home win streak alive. 2-1 lead here for Western Washington. Seattle Pacific won the first set, and since then it's been Western Washington back-to-back sets to take a 2-1 edge. The Falcons have had 2 5-set wins at home this season against Biola and against Alaska Fairbanks, and it will take another rally to keep this impressive home season going. 11-0 at home this year. The streak on the line against by far the best team in the conference and perhaps one of the best teams in the country. We'll see where it all shakes out in the postseason for Western Washington, but they've clinched the conference title. They're ranked 16th in the country, and they're on a 14-match win streak. So that's the immovable force that is going up against Seattle Pacific's home win streak. And it's been hard fought for both teams. Well played, especially the attack side. But the serve-receive game has given both teams so much trouble. And there's shaky handling on the opening serve and a 1-0 lead for Western Washington. The Vikings are hitting .295 for the match. Seattle Pacific .238. But service errors aplenty for both teams. An impressive swing by Aaron Gould right down the sideline. Even caused the block of Western Washington to kind of look back to see if that was out. 9 service errors by the Vikings, 6 by the Falcons. Gould sends one cross court. Chasing it down, Casey Woodruff. Free ball sent back deep. Down the middle, Hare had it blocked. Right in position, Emily Tulino. Feeding Batiste the outside. Cut shot too short. Tried to roll that one down. And it goes into the net. 2-1 edge for Western Washington. After this, Seattle Pacific will head on the road for a couple, starting on Thursday at Central Washington. That one's going to be tough. Central Washington, undefeated at home this year. That was blocked out by Western Washington. 3 teams in the conference are undefeated at home. The Vikings, the Falcons, and Central Washington. So we'll see what happens on Thursday night, and then they'll finish it out on Saturday. What a year, though, for the Falcons. They were picked 5th in the conference, 5th in the preseason poll. Right now, they're in 3rd and can move into 2nd if they win tonight. So at worst, they'll stay at 3rd with a chance to really make some moves in the last couple of matches of the season. Western Washington was picked to win the league, and they have done so again. And just a deadened serve right there. Callie Heilborn looked around, and that's one of those, I don't know what happened. But it's a service ace for Seattle Pacific. Lindsay Rosenthal sends one spinning deep and too far. Service ace leads to service error. And time is a flat circle. It all evens back out. Well, that's been the story because these two good blocking and good offensive teams have lived up to that side. Western Washington has 42 assists. Seattle Pacific has 40. Kills are 44-42 in favor of Western Washington. Now make that 45 after that swing. And this is a Vikings team that came in leading the conference in hitting percentage and assists per set, leading the conference and 3rd in the country in blocks per set. And right behind them in nearly every category, Seattle Pacific. 2nd in the conference blocks per set, 2nd in assists per set, and 3rd in kills per set. To the outside, massive swing by Gabby Gunterman. That one hurt listening to it up here. Like a mini sonic boom on that cross-court shot. The Western Washington's in front. Back and forth, 4th set here. Big swing by Maddie Batiste. And I believe, Maddie Batiste Yeah, Maddie Batiste now has recorded 1,000 career points. She came in needing 9 points. Had to make sure that's what the announcement was for. She's the 18th Falcon to ever do so. 1,000 career points for Maddie Batiste. But more importantly, in this short term, she tied up the match, and she tied up the set, and now the Falcons are in front. So a 6-5 edge here for Seattle Pacific. Batiste, one of 2 seniors on the roster. Lindsay Lambert's a junior. She serves it over. Little joust goes the way of Western Washington. Back to Gabby Gunterman to serve. Junior from Lake Stevens, Washington. Second on the team in kills per set. A little over 3 per set. Had a huge game in a 5-set win against Alaska Fairbanks. 22 kills and 22 digs. Batiste has been the go-to factor, but she hit that one right into the arms of Chloe Ritzesender. And it was blocked back with authority. That breaks a 6-6 tie. 7-6 edge and a 2-1 lead for Western Washington. Quick dump over the top. Almost hit, but inches from the wood. Casey Woodruff got it. Ritzesender plays it over. Back to that pin, and there is some space for Sarah Brackvogel. Brackvogel gets her second kill. Pretty close third set until Western Washington pulled away at the end. Very close here in the fourth set, as close as you can be. We're tied at 7. Sharp angled serve sails out. Tack on another service error. That's 8 now for Seattle Pacific. All of them coming in these last 3 sets. They played a clean first set, no service errors, and now have 8 service errors across the second, third, and early into the fourth. And just 5 service aces. So where Western Washington has been able to mitigate that, and there's another one, because Western Washington now has 10 service aces to just 9 service errors. The Falcons, 5 aces, 8 errors. And that causes a timeout from Abby Wright. She was named the head coach on February 16th, 2017. And the first recruit she signed was Maddie Batiste, who was honored tonight as one of 2 seniors on the Seattle Pacific roster, Maddie Batiste and Aaron Gould. Wright spent 4 seasons as an assistant at Biola, was the National Assistant of the Year in 2015, and then got the win over her alma mater earlier this season. That had to be pretty cool. And has turned this Falcons team into a nice force this year. 14-8, 10-5 in the conference. On the other side, Diane Flick-Williams has been doing it with success for a long time. In her 22nd season, she is 470 and 114. 80% winning percentage as the head coach of the Vikings. Low serve, but handled. Goes back to Gould, and that kill just sails long. An attack error, that's the 19th from Seattle Pacific. So it's been a pretty clean game by Western Washington. That's been another reason why this one is tilted in their favor. Just 11 attack errors on 117 total attacks. Not too bad. Brockvogel's swing turned aside. Right back over to her. Tried the angle, went into the net. Back-to-back attack errors by Seattle Pacific. And now the Falcons need to stem the tide of momentum that is tilting the floor in the favor of the Vikings. Not literally, of course. Figuratively, tilting the court in favor of Western Washington. Get a point back there after a mishandle by the Vikings. So Abby Wright has never beaten Western Washington. The Falcons' last win came back in 2013 against the Vikings. That was on the road, a 3-1 road win. And it was the 500th in program history for Seattle Pacific. A nice symmetry tonight because they can get win number 600 against Western Washington. It would be the 600th win in program history, and Western Washington would be the team on the other end of both win number 500 and win number 600. Racing in, it's Saliaga. And coming back in to set up, Callie Heilborn. And that one flies back over, so another kill for Heilborn. Sophomore out of Auburn, Washington. Leads the team in kills per set and digs per set. 17 double-doubles this season for Callie Heilborn. And in this one, she's getting closer to another double-double. 14 digs to lead the Vikings and 8 kills. They feed her again. Heilborn with the nice angle. Went with the roll on that one. The extreme short corner. So alternating power and angle. Back-to-back kills by Heilborn. And it's that ferocious combo of Heilborn and Gunterman that are slowly wearing down Seattle Pacific. But another service error by the Vikings. I think that's what coaches like, though, right? So if Western Washington wins, there's one definitive category where a coach can point to and say, yeah, you guys did not do well in that. You need to improve. Strangely, that's why some coaches are more pleased after a close win or even a loss than a win where it seems like everything goes right, because you can tell your players, hey, don't get so full of yourself. Look at all the things we did wrong. And if you win relatively easily, maybe complacency sets in. So best of both worlds when you get a close win, that there are marked things you can improve on. But Seattle Pacific's not going to go down easily, especially on this court. Two players run into each other, though, and that leads to a Vikings point. 11-0 at home this season. Their last home loss came at the very end of 2019. And they have beaten some good opponents along the way this year. A win over Simon Fraser, win over St. Cloud State, 5-set wins over Biola and Alaska Fairbanks, and another service error by Western Washington has kept the Falcons right in this set. 2 errors in the last 3 serves by Western Washington. Aaron Gould trying to make him pay. From the back row, Gunterman got that. Slowed down that shot, and it caught Seattle Pacific a little bit out of position. 15-12 edge. Gabby Gunterman has now soared into the lead in kills. Early on, it was Olivia Fairchild, but Western Washington has run the offense through Gunterman, and it's paid off. Spinning around, that point goes to Seattle Pacific. 15 kills for Gabby Gunterman on 40 total attacks. No one else on Western Washington has more than 24. So it's been Gunterman swinging at will tonight. And that's someone who has a few of them, Chloe Ritzesender, but she just missed, trying to send that shot down the line. 14-15, the home team trails. Lindsay Rosenthal jumps into that serve. Push back up, Tess Biskup sends it over. And then blocked out. Couldn't close the block, Ritzesender and Gunterman. And Seattle Pacific has come back to tie this set. Trailing 2-1, they've tied it at 15. Impressive hitting here in this 4th set by Seattle Pacific. And Western Washington looks out of sorts, and Diane Flick-Williams knows it. And angrily clap of the hands together as she sends her team back to the huddle. and fires off a timeout. Look at the run by Seattle Pacific to surge into the lead, 16-15. Now this match started off in favor of Western Washington. Or this set, rather. And now it's been quite a run for Seattle Pacific. Oh, in this fourth set, it's been the defenses, neither team hitting too well. 5 attack errors by Seattle Pacific, 4 by Western Washington. Falcons are hitting just .087, and Western Washington 133. 2 blocks for the Vikings, none for the Falcons. 2 service errors apiece. But 7 kills for Seattle Pacific. And more importantly, a 16-15 edge. Back to the outside, it's Gunterman. Who else finds that open sliver of space? And that's kill number 16 for Gabby Gunterman. And she will take up her spot right at the front of the net alongside Chloe Ritzesender and Malia Aliaga. The serve flies long. Another service error, the third here in this set by Western Washington. That is what led to Seattle Pacific winning set number 1. In the first set, 5 service errors by Western Washington. 3 this set. And they have 11 for the match. Gunterman taps it short. Goes off the top of the net. They recover. To the outside, Brock Vogel had it tipped down. Dug out and back over and into the net. Gunterman tried to go with that extreme angle once again. It's an attack error, and Seattle Pacific has its largest lead of the set, 18-16. They have surged back in front and will not go down without a fight. Trailing 2-1. Trying to topple the conference champs. Big swing by Ritzesender. That ends the run by Seattle Pacific. And here's where the serve-receive game becomes ever so critical. Late in a set and in a 1-point game. Gunterman serving. Tap back over. Brock Vogel had it short. They were ready for it. The block of Western Washington was ready. Chloe Ritzesender deflecting everything that came her way. Smacked it back over. And Western Washington has tied it up. Drama building here at Brome Pavilion. To the outside. Right again to Brock Vogel. Gunterman in position. From the back row, just sends it over. Tried to go short. She does. Gunterman went with the quick play, a lobbed arcing ball to the back row. That looked out. It looked out. It was very close, and somehow it just fell. Everyone in disbelief on that Seattle Pacific bench. That could be a massive point right there. Into the middle. Bodies hit the floor to keep that ball alive. Tap down. Over into the net. And a tough play. Ada Heilborn. Tied at 19. That shot by Gunterman. Still can't get over that one. She readjusted her swing in midair. Sent it to the back corner where she saw no one was covering. And the ball was somehow able to land in. Tied at 19. Here's Maddie Batiste. Deep serve, eats up Woodruff. Able to recover. There is a booming cross-court shot by Callie Heilborn. So Heilborn and Gunterman. Western Washington riding the Stars here in set number 4. and it's Adele Holland to serve. She's got a couple of service errors, though, so far tonight. Back outside, huge kill, Erin Gould. The senior coming to life. The final home game of Erin Gould's career. She delivers a massive point to tie up this fourth set, 20-20. Allison Wilkes will serve. A lot of spin on that ball. Dug out cleanly. Tough angle. Well outside the court for Heilborn. Back outside, Brockvogel. Back set, swing around Fairchild. It's dug out. Racing in. Everyone there for Western Washington. That roll shot didn't work. Brockvogel again, tipped around. It's saved. Great point underway. Bodies on the floor. Western Washington comes up with it. Seattle Pacific recovers. From the back row, Gould. It's dug out. Tapped over, and a diving dig by Gunterman. Heilborn from the pin. Best point of the match. Hannah Hare can't end it. Down the middle, Fairchild taps it back. To the outside, Gould swing, tipped around. Maliaga to the outside pin, tipped up and out, and an epic point. That took about 5 minutes, and finally Western Washington able to deliver the finisher off a swing from Callie Heilborn. You can feel the stakes every point now as these teams get closer and closer to 25. And Western Washington trying to close out the match. Seattle Pacific trying to just stay alive. And the Vikings lead 21-20. I think everyone needs a timeout just to catch their breath. To the middle. Hannah Hare goes soft. Heilborn. It's a big swing and a finish, and she is pointing emphatically to Malia Aliaga, who set that one up. Heilborn has delivered back-to-back kills. And a timeout, Abby Wright. Callie Heilborn, the 6'1 sophomore outside hitter, the 2019 Freshman of the Year. There were a couple of others who shouldered the scoring load early for Western Washington, Olivia Fairchild and Gabby Gunterman. But down the stretch, it's been all Heilborn. 12 kills on 34 total attacks. She's got 5 service aces and 16 digs. So an impressive performance by Heilborn for her 18th double-double of the season. For Seattle Pacific, Hannah Hare has delivered 10 kills. Maddie Batiste right behind her with 8. And Erin Gould with 7, so some balanced offense. Allison Wilkes also has 8 kills. Really nice match for her to go along with 6 blocks and a dig. 12 digs from Batiste, 14 from Gould, and 10 from Lindsay Lambert. And 28 assists from Emily Tulino. Aliaga has 49 assists to pace Western Washington. Had a career-high 66 earlier this year against Cal State San Bernardino in a 5-set loss for the Western Washington Vikings. 22-20. Getting late for Seattle Pacific. Running out of time to rally in this one. Gould trying to deliver. And she does. For a moment it looked like Woodruff might have gotten the hands underneath that ball. But it went off the floor first. That was a massive swing by Erin Gould. She'll walk up to the front of the net as Emily Tulino goes back to serve. One of just 2 freshmen on the roster for Seattle Pacific. Good serve by Tulino. Woodruff had to hit the deck. Tap short. Hannah Hare was there on the block. Tulino sets it up. They fake it to Hare, but it caught Seattle Pacific a little unaware. Hare and Gould didn't have the timing right. And that's a tough one this late in the match. 23-21 on the serve of Western Washington. The Vikings lead 2-1. Deep serve. Bodies to the floor, but it's saved. Gould taps it over. To the pin. Biskup hammers it home. Match point for Western Washington. The indomitable force of the Vikings trying to break through the home win streak of Seattle Pacific. 14-match win streak for Western Washington. Served by Heilborn. To the outside, it's blocked. Right back is Seattle Pacific. Another swing, cross court, big one, and it connects. Maddie Pruden doesn't usually set up on that side, but she hammers it home. Seattle Pacific stays alive, trailing 24-22 here in the fourth set. Cross-court serve by Gould. Push to the outside, it's Gunterman into the block. The crowd has roared to life here for the Falcons, 24-23, and a timeout, Diane Flick-Williams. Trying to quiet that momentum in the surge of the home crowd. As Gabby Gunterman, they just went mano-a-mano right there. The best attacker on Western Washington going up against the force of Seattle Pacific's block, and the block won out. The Falcons fighting to the very end. They won the first set, 26-24. Since then, Western Washington, 25-18 and 25-19. The Vikings hold a 24-23 lead, but it will be on the serve of Seattle Pacific coming out of this timeout. Program win number 600 on the line. A chance to move into second in the conference. And a chance to knock off Western Washington for the first time in almost 10 years. Aaron Gould will serve for Seattle Pacific. Now Seattle Pacific can't knock them off in this set, but it would keep a chance alive at that. Trailing 2-1. Match point for Western Washington. To the right pin, swing by Biskup. Right there is the block, almost off the ceiling. Over to Batiste, big swing by Batiste. The defense right there for Western Washington. A roll shot down the line, it's recovered. Racing all the way around, and a rotation error will end it. Western Washington sprints out to celebrate. Tough one to end when you end it on a violation. Hard fought match though. Western Washington takes 3 straight sets after dropping the first, and Seattle Pacific with a valiant effort in the match and in that set, too, to come back and to really fight all the way down to the end, losing 25-23. But they surge back into that fourth set after it looked like the Vikings would pull away with it. So Seattle Pacific loses at home for the first time this season. They will finish an impressive 11-1 at Brome Pavilion this year. They fall to 14-9 on the year and 10-6 in conference, but right in the thick of the top of the GNAC, Simon Fraser, Central Washington, and a couple other teams around them. So Seattle Pacific still with a chance to finish second in the conference. They'll head on the road now for 2 final matches this season. Western Washington improves to 20-4 on the season and 16-1 in conference. Up next for Seattle Pacific, Thursday night at Central Washington, and then they'll close out the season Saturday, November 20th, a week from tonight. A day game, though, a noon match against Northwest Nazarene. That'll do it tonight from Brome Pavilion. Seattle Pacific drops a hard-fought one in 4 sets. They lose 3-1 to Western Washington. Thanks for listening, and have a nice evening.